This is Tim Hurley, and I am here with the drummer for Ashley McBryde, Quinn, the Caveman Hill. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, man.
Let's just jump right into it. Caveman, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I was thinking more like Pretty Boy right. Or Delicate Flower or what.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And people always ask me how I got that nickname. It's literally just because I kind of look like a caveman. I was on drumline when I was in college, and supposedly everybody had to have a nickname. And one of the other guys was like, well, he looks like a caveman. And then it just stuck.
I love it. So it's just another band member, another class, another student that gave you the coin, huh? They own all the credit.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, let's just get to the basics. Where are you from? Where were you born? How'd you get into music?
I was born and raised in Arkansas, and I grew up in a little town, 3 miles from the nearest interstate. We had a Walmart though. So,
oh, that's major. Hey, you can't call it a small town if there's a Walmart there, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And, I don't know. I mean, I started playing drums when I was 4, or I got my first drum when I was 4, and supposedly, I was just banging on everything all the time, books and pans or whatever. And my uncle had an old snare drum from when he was in, school band. And my parents asked if I could mess with it. So for my 4th birthday, they gave me that. And then basically for the rest of my life, I played drums every day, and I would beg anytime we were out running errands or, I had to go to school or anything like that. I was always begging, like, when are we going home? I got to practice or whatever, and so every couple of years they upgraded my kit. My parents did. And they were always incredibly supportive, which is saying a lot when your kid wants to play drums.
I was going to say, it sounds more like they're more like a glutton for punishment by the sounds of it.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And not only is it the loudest instrument, but it's one of the more expensive and cumbersome. And, you got to have a whole room for it. And it's a whole thing. And anyway, so I just kind of went through, I did school band and was on drumline and all that stuff. Went to college on a music scholarship. And I actually
what school did you go to? Sorry to interrupt you. What school did you go to?
Oh, you're good. I went to the University of Memphis, and I was majoring in recording technology, but I only went for a year. School was always my plan B. Since I was in the 3rd grade, I wanted to be a professional drummer, and school was, I kind of felt like I needed that plan B, because the music industry, particularly if you want to be a musician, it's sort of there's a lot of luck involved, and nothing is guaranteed. So I wanted to have that plan B. And then I realized that I was spending all my time and effort on plan B without really going for plan A yet. So I left after my first year and started touring with a band it was some guys I met when I was in college in Memphis, and we were based out of Memphis, and we went all over the country, all 4 corners several times. I had a 1994 short bus, like a school bus, a little 14-passenger school bus, still yellow and black.
I know well.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, I was in a band. We did the same thing. Mine was 2006, but we probably had more mechanical problems than you did if you went cross country a few times.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, before you go on, you're coming out of Memphis. What was the band? A country band, or what was the genre of music? Because obviously, big blues city.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a psychedelic rock. So think like Pink Floyd, Flaming Lips, Tame Impala, that kind of vibe.
Awesome.
And that was some of the most fun I've ever had musically, and also just in life. I mean, who doesn't want to travel around the country with all your best friends in a school bus,
So cost-wise, people don't necessarily know the sacrifice that really takes, right? Because you guys are paying the bill, you're playing bar gigs, you're not well known. How much are you guys actually making when you played a gig every night? How were you guys sleeping? What were the arrangements?
For the majority of the time I was in that band, I actually paid money to be in that band. It was we would make gas most of the time. And if there was a little bit extra, it would typically go back into, having merch printed or having vinyls printed or something like that. Every now and then there'd be like a little kind of nest egg piled up in the bank account, and they would, we would disperse it amongst us, but for the most part, that was an investment.
And what was the diet looking like for a bunch of guys on the road living, bar tab to bar tab, basically?
Yeah, a lot of Love's truck stop hot dogs and that kind of stuff. Very much roughing it and just like making ends meet. However you can. And we all had like part-time jobs back home. So that we could pay the bills and that kind of stuff. But they had to be part-time and real flexible so that we could then, take 3 weeks off and go off and do our little shows in warehouses and stuff.
So how old were you at this point?
This was when I was like 19 to 22 in there.
All right. So two-part question then for you. First of all, how were you able to play bar gigs when you were 19?
Right.
And you don't have to answer that if you don't want to, fake IDs or what are we dealing with?
Well, I actually started playing in bars when I was 16, when I was still in high school. I was in a band back home. It was like a dance pop band. And we would go down to Little Rock and play, Sticky Fingers and stuff like that down in Little Rock. And there was one time where it came up and the guy was like, wait, he's how old? And it was like, it was going to be a problem, but then they just let me do it,
Ask for forgiveness later, part, I guess,
Yeah. But I also started growing facial hair when I was in the 8th grade. So, it was, it was actually funny. The bass player in that band was well into his 20s when I was in this band. And they would always card him before they carded me because he didn't have facial hair. And, I've always kind of had this look. So
was it a full beard in the 8th grade?
It was like mostly chops and a little bit of a neck beard.
I mean, you were probably the scariest kid. I don't know if you played sports, but I'm sure everybody's scared of you.
I played football when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, and my dad always jokes that the other kids would call me sir.
I know I played against a million guys just like you, so I'm going to call you sir from the rest of this interview here. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I got another question for the tour. Obviously, you're on the road. You're young, 19 to 22. Did you look at it like an investment in your career at that time, or were you just looking at like you're having a good time with your buddies?
A little bit of both. That band had a lot of potential, and I loved the music and I loved the guys, and it was like the thing, the gig that I had going for myself at the time, and also we had one of the guys in the band. He was connected with the Flaming Lips and was playing with the Flaming Lips and stuff like that. So we had some of the right connections that you need, to work your way up the ladder and that kind of stuff. And we were playing great shows, and we were playing big festivals and that kind of stuff. So it very much seemed like it could be, the path to reaching my goals, which when I was a kid, I basically only set 2 major goals. And one was having my drumming on the radio and touring internationally. And so I never was like, I want to be in a rock band, or I want to be in a country band or a pop band or anything like that. It was, I want to be in a band and do those things, And so I always sort of thought I would wind up in LA because I didn't grow up listening to country music. Or playing country music or anything like that. I always kind of thought I would be in like some kind of rock band or pop band. And anyway, yeah. So Space Base was the name of that band. It was some of both. It was definitely hanging out with my friends and doing the whole traveling around, road tripping thing. But it also was really it not only did it feel like it was at least a stepping stone towards, achieving my goals, but I also, now looking back on it, learned so much from it. And it really, really did play a huge role in me being where I am.
So as a kid, you were imagining international tours. What was the country that you wanted to go to most? Or what was the venue maybe that you wanted to play most when you were a little kid?
I've always dreamed about Australia. which is cool because now in 2019 we went to Australia and played Australia.
No big deal. No big deal.
Yeah. Australia was always a big one for me, and Spain has been on my list for a while. I haven't been there yet, but so far as venues go, it's interesting because when you're a kid dreaming about being a famous musician or whatever, you know that kind of the pinnacle of that is arenas and stadiums and stuff. And now that I've played some arenas and some stadiums, it's so funny because they're all basically the same. That it's if you're on an arena tour, you pull in and particularly when the buses are parked in the arena, it's real easy to not see the light of day in a show day, because you're just kind of stuck in that arena, and it's like a maze down there. But that being said, there still are some important ones. Like we got to play Madison Square Garden this past year when we were on tour with Luke Combs, which is incredible. I mean, that's one that you hear about from a young age and you start to really dream about and stuff. And so there's all of the kind of staples, Madison Square Garden and Red Rocks and the O2 in London and all that kind of stuff. But for me, the most sort of spiritual musical moments that I've had have really been in the small theaters or clubs where you're packed in there and you're face to face with the crowd and everybody's kind of feeding off of each other and experiencing that musical fusion, together.
Yeah, it's a little different when you're performing in a stadium, right? You got the in-ears, you're basically completely deaf to the entire audience, and you can't see them probably because of the lights.
Right.
So you can see like kind of blurry images. It's a little different when somebody's 50 feet away from you and you can see their visceral response on how they're receiving your message and how they're receiving the music.
Right. Absolutely. One of the interesting things about the Luke Combs tour was that a lot of it was in the round. So, the stage is in the center of this stadium, and the way we had to set up as the opener on that stage meant that my back was to, a quarter of the crowd. So there was people that were just like behind me, watching me from behind for the whole show. And I would always, when Ashley goes around and introduces everybody during the set, and when she would get to me, I always would turn around and then would be like, I'm so sorry for what you have to look at. This is, I can't help it.
That's awesome. So do you ever have drummer enthusiasts that are at a show like that might hit you up while they're watching your technique? Because I know a lot of drummers and they're all their own special breed. It's like being a hockey goalie, that you're like a special breed where they're, it's
Absolutely.
all about technique, all about the kit and stuff. Do you get a lot of those DMs?
Oh yeah. I get a lot of messages and I get a lot of people that, will come up to me and, cause I like to go out and, watch some of the show or whatever. And there's a couple times where people, will like ask for a drumstick or something. And I have to hurry and get my kid off the stage and all that stuff. So sometimes I'll come back out and bring them a drumstick or whatever, if I can. And, it's a lot of fun. It's really, particularly for someone like me that has that kind of imposter syndrome and that super critical, creative mind or whatever. It's really special to hear people that are inspired when they watch me play, because I know that feeling. I know the feeling of watching some of my favorite drummers or drummers I've never seen before or whatever, and feeling inspired to go play and learn and be better and stuff like that. And so to hear that I'm doing that for someone else is really, really special to me, and definitely makes that little voice in my head a little bit quieter each time.
Well, hopefully you just opened the door up for maybe some fans that were reluctant to reach out to you. Maybe they'll hear this and find happiness knowing that you're welcoming those kind of conversations
Absolutely.
with them. That's very cool. So how did you actually link up with Ashley McBryde? Because what's cool about Ashley is that her band has been together for a long time, and she gives you guys so much love. I've interviewed Ashley a bunch. I've actually opened for Ashley McBryde at a festival, so we've indirectly met years ago. But she always gives you guys praise, love. She really treats you like part of the family. How'd you get linked up with such a special artist?
So I've been with Ashley now. This is our 11th year together. And I'm the longest tenured member or whatever at this point. And when I joined the band, it was a bar band. I mean, she was in Nashville at that point, but she kind of had like a circuit in the Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, area, and she was playing the same bars and kind of doing that stuff and just driving around in her Tundra. And she's from Arkansas, but she sort of cut her teeth in Memphis after she left college. And we had a mutual friend who's a singer-songwriter that also spent a lot of time in Memphis performing and writing and stuff. And so they knew each other. And she was from Mountain Home, and Ashley was coming through Mountain Home on the way back to Nashville or something from playing some shows. And they knew that she was looking for a new drummer. And they called me and said, "Hey, Ashley's coming by the house on her way through town. You should come over and meet her and, show her some of your videos and stuff." So I did.
No pressure.
Right, exactly.
With a Nashville competition, right? That's crazy.
Yeah. And at this point, this was 2000. This was 2012. So I was 19, and I had moved back home from Memphis and was just didn't really have much of a music thing going other than the Space Face thing, which was pretty sporadic at this point. And I knew that she lived in Nashville and, was like a country singer and a songwriter and like the real deal or whatever. Anyway, so I went over and met her and showed her some of my terrible YouTube videos of me playing along to songs and stuff. And she was just like, "Yeah, I mean, come over to Nashville and we'll rehearse at the house, and then you can play a show with us and we'll see how it goes."
That is quite an invitation. Was the heart skipping a little bit at that point, or was she still not a big enough deal to get nervous about it?
Oh, I was definitely nervous, partly about the driving to Nashville, and with my drum kit, and because I had been to Nashville, but not really by myself at this point, but I was more nervous because, like I said earlier, I didn't grow up listening to country music. So her guitar player at the time sent me a list of the songs that I should be familiar with. And it was 3 pages stapled together of like 12-point font. It was like 70 songs.
Oh my God. Were they all covers or were they all originals?
It was some of both, but mostly covers. And I was, I knew maybe 10 of them, or had heard maybe 10 of them.
Right. That's different than knowing 10 of them too, by the way. Having heard 10 and knowing 10 are very different things as a musician.
Exactly. And so what I did was I made a playlist in my iPod that was like as many of the songs as I could find. And, I wrote some notes on a few of them and stuff like that, and went over there and set up half of my drum kit in her little living room. At the time, she lived in a little 2-bedroom house off Nolensville. And it was just, there wasn't really like a rehearsal space. It was literally just the living room. And so I set my little kit up, and I was thinking that we were going to run through all these songs and I was going to learn them and it was going to be great. And we played maybe 4 or 5 of them. A few of them we didn't even play all the way through. And then they were like, "Sounds great. We'll see you next week in Jackson." And I was So I had to, while Ashley was talking between songs, I would like listen to the first 30 seconds or so of a song. And then when she would get done, she would turn around and I would be like, "Okay," and count it off, and we're off to the races,
That is crazy. So you weren't playing to a click at that point. You're just playing off the hip at that show.
Yeah. It was a very much a play it by ear situation, which I've always credited growing up playing music in church to my ability to kind of roll with the punches and play by ear and kind of listen to what everybody else in the band is doing and following whoever's leading the song, because when you're playing in church, there's a lot of that kind of flying by the seat of your pants and following people that are praying, or like the worship leader that I grew up playing with most, he would like change the set list as we were walking up on stage and stuff, so I had a lot of practice kind of, just winging it. And that really helped definitely on that first gig. But I specifically remember the song that we were playing when I realized that this was going to be not only a long story, but an important one in my life. And we were playing No One Else on Earth, and we were in the back, like kind of courtyard at this bar in Jackson, Tennessee called Downtown Tavern, and we kicked into that song, and the crowd, it was like 20 people, yeah. But they were just so into it, and it was such a good time. And I was just like jamming, and, barely knew the song, but I was just like keeping the groove, and like hearing Ashley, at the time I had seen her play one show. So the second time I saw her sing I was playing with her. So, and you've seen Ashley, how it's a special thing. So I was like amazed by that, and just having, such a great time, and having one of those spiritual musical, movements. And I was like, this is going to be something. And then flash forward a few years, and I'm moving to Nashville, and we're opening for all the biggest names and signing to a major label, and then, recording records and all that stuff. So
well, I got to play off that story, because the first time I ever heard Ashley was when we were opening for her at the Lakes Jam in Brainerd, Minnesota years ago. Okay. And we pulled up, and I had like a rental van, for my band. We were going to be the first slot, I think, on like a Saturday afternoon, and Ashley was after us. I'd never heard of her. We pull up, and she was sound checking, but I think it was just by herself at that time. Anyway, she was just holding a guitar. She had the band with her for sure, but she was just strumming the guitar. And I remember getting out of the van and going like, oh my God, that's like an unbelievably angelic voice. And I looked, and all the vendors stopped what they were doing. Everybody pulled forward and just started listening to Ashley strum on the guitar and sing. I'm like, who is this girl? Looked up. I became a fan ever since. I mean, as you described it, it was just like this majestic moment of like, wow, talent and authenticity behind everything that she does. So absolutely. After the show, and I'm going to lead it into the next question here. After the show, I walked backstage after we played, and she's smoking a cigarette, and I'm pretty sure it was whiskey that she was drinking. It seemed like at the time anyway. I don't know if she still drinks and smokes or all that stuff, but my understanding is that you don't do any of that stuff. You don't drink or smoke,
correct?
Right?
Correct.
So
yeah.
Is it difficult to vibe with a band that might have a lot of drinking going on, a lot of smoking going on, maybe some riffraff, some unmentionables, and you're the you're the guy who's well behaved, who got his chops in church?
It's I get that question a lot, and I also get the question of like how am I totally sober in my line of work and stuff, and I just have never had an interest in it. I've literally never had a sip of alcohol or smoked anything or anything like that, and which is, I think that's kind of the key, because I'm impervious to peer pressure. You know what I mean? Like there's no like pressure. I don't feel like it. I need to be drinking to like fit into a social situation or whatever like that. And so it's really, I mean, I'm just hanging out, and all the people I know and love for the most part at least drink or smoke or something. So it's kind of it's a situation of like accepting without condoning or whatever, and I think that it definitely took me some years of working because when I was younger I was really mad about drinking, and I was mad about people breaking the rules and that kind of stuff, and I pushed a lot of people away being that way. So I had to learn how to not be angry about it, and still be able to be around it, and in order to maintain the relationships with the people I love. And then, when I went to college and I got in Space Face and all that kind of stuff, it was all the same thing. Everybody was drinking and particularly at the drumline parties and all that. And I just kind of do my own thing. It's really not, people praise me a lot for my willpower and self-discipline and all that. And it's really not even that much of a task for me. I just kind of do my thing and let people do their thing. And just pound Dr. Peppers.
Well, there's a notion too. People think that, you're on the road, you're on tour, and it's just wild behind the scenes. Would you
Yeah,
agree that like the bigger you get, the less wild it becomes? Like you're playing stadium
absolutely.
shows, all of a sudden you've got way more responsibility. You got to be up early in the morning. It's a different animal than
Yeah.
playing bar gigs a couple times a week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that, some of it is because of the sort of responsibilities that come along with, the higher levels in the industry. But I think more of it is that you learn that it's not sustainable. It's the guys that are just playing music because they want to be cool or they want to get the girls or whatever. Those are the guys that are always partying. But the guys that understand that this is something they want to do for the rest of their life and understand that, they have to be on their A game physically and mentally to really, put on the best show and create the best music in the studio and all that kind of stuff. You start to realize that lifestyle of staying up late or drinking and partying and all that stuff is not sustainable. You start doing like what I do. And I drink several bottles of water throughout the day. And then I start warming up an hour before we go on stage. And then I drink 4 or 5 bottles of water during the show, and then after the show, it's kind of decompress mode. And then you take it easy and you try to get a good night's sleep and do it all again the next day, because we're on the road every week, basically, playing 3, 4, sometimes 5 shows a week. And it starts to take a toll if you're not taking care of yourself.
So when you guys aren't on the road, when you're not touring, do you find this lull? Like, are you trying to keep busy? What do you do? Because now you're obviously, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like you're probably not a hired gun. Ashley probably has you
Right.
on the staff. You're full-time, more or less. What do you do to keep busy when you're not touring?
Well, it's been interesting. When we came off the road because of the pandemic, there was a lot of, having to take up the slack financially, not just like mentally, but and so I started a couple businesses and doing media production and that kind of stuff. And I was running some social media accounts, and I was building decks and remodeling homes and remodeling RVs and like all kinds of stuff like that. And then when we went back on the road, there was some of that still was kind of lingering. So I was doing both, and we would be on the road on the weekends. And then, we would get home Sunday evening or Monday, and I would go and do drywall or something like that, and I really spread myself very thin last year in 2021. So at the end of last year, I kind of got to the end of some of the obligations I had and started saying no to new ones. And so now I've pared it down to this playing with Ashley is pretty much my only gig, that is like my only job that I have to do, And so I have this thing called free time now, and it is very strange. I'm still learning how to deal with it, but I do a lot of motorcycle riding, and I do a lot of photography and videography, and just kind of enjoying the beautiful country that's around Nashville, and trying to work on some of my personal passion projects and that kind of stuff. But it's definitely a learning curve to being on the road on the weekends and then home, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's 2 totally different lifestyles, and being constantly thrown back and forth between the two is there's an adjustment period for sure.
So Ashley recently took a hiatus, and I won't ask you for details on that because she hasn't felt like it was the right time to release any kind of reasons behind it. Was that a nervous time for you? Were you thinking maybe this is like pandemic 2.0, or had they communicated with you that it was like real temporary and you guys are going to be back working soon, or were you covered financially during that hiatus?
Yeah, it was that was interesting because I expected my response to be sort of nervous and that kind of thing. But for some reason or another, I was very kind of at peace with the whole thing. And I think a lot of it had to do with, it wasn't just her that needed a break. I mean, we hit the road, back from the pandemic. Our first show was June 1st, basically, of 2021. And we did more shows in 2021 in the 6 months that we had in 2021 than we did in 2019, all 12 months.
That's insane.
And then we had just under 2 weeks off for Christmas. And then we started rehearsals on January 2nd. And it's been nonstop since. So we haven't had more than 2 weeks off, in over a year. So, and it's been like, there was at least one run where we were out for 5 weeks straight last year. And there was another run that was 3 or 4 weeks. So it's been a really, really busy, year. And on top of that, there was a lot of other kind of stress factors, and she had the accident in the fall last year with the horse and everything. So it's just been like a tough year, and so some of it was that we all really benefited from the time off, and then some of it was just, trusting her, and trusting our team management and the label and everybody, not only to have us taken care of during that time, but also to, knowing that she wasn't just giving up or something, like
Sure.
this is what she wants to do, and she's going to do it. She always says, "Come hell or high whiskey," so I was very calm during all that, and obviously I'm ecstatic to be back on the road and back, doing what we all love and playing music and stuff like that. But it really wasn't a scary time. It was, I think the scariest part was just kind of, worrying about the fans and all the people that, that we had this sort of obligation to, but I'm on the fan page, so I see all of the support and everything. And I was really happy to see that everybody, for the most part, had this outpouring of love and encouragement.
Yeah, it didn't seem like there was any negative backlash at all in that circumstance. Yeah. Kind of unlike an Eric Church taking personal time for maybe a reason that maybe don't make that one public. But
right.
Well,
right.
You just described like a crazy lifestyle on the road. Obviously, long time in very, very tight quarters. There are going to be disagreements. There's going to be some personality clashes and stuff. How do you resolve those? You have to nip them in the bud. Is there anything that can ever linger that, you might even take it on stage where there's a little bit of tension, or how do you guys handle that?
Yeah. I learned pretty quickly when I started being in bands and in this kind of, the music industry is an interesting one because it's a mix of creative and also it's a business. So you kind of have two not necessarily similar wavelengths there. And I learned pretty early that it's important to communicate and, be candid with people. And then it's also kind of, I don't know if it's just my style or the people that I gravitate towards, but we tease each other a lot. And, sometimes we're teasing just to tease, but it's also kind of a method to air out some of those frustrations, you might like one thing that one example I've used in the past is so the bunks in our bus have these curtains that you draw, and that's your only privacy really. But the curtains can be real loud if you whip them back and forth because on the little track. And there's a couple guys in the band that don't, they just whip them open or whatever, because they're in a hurry or whatever, but me, I'm real like, tiptoey. And I if everybody's asleep, I bring it back real slowly and that kind of thing, and, so I'll just make fun of somebody, for if they're whipping their curtain open or whatever, and it actually is frustrating to me. But I also recognize that it's not something to actually be upset about, you know what I mean? So I'll just like make fun of them for it, you know, and it's kind of I don't know, actually, if there's psychologists watching this, it might actually be unhealthy, but it seems, it seems like it works, you know, and kind of keeps everybody having a good time and you know, just roasting each other and stuff. But it also helps to have good people in the band. You know, there's not anybody that we all have, you know, don't like being around or anything like that, you know, so it's really important to, particularly, you know, when you're all on one bus, which we have been up until May of this year, you know, you gotta pay attention to the people that you're bringing in, not just the skills that you're bringing in. Which the music industry, you know, one of the tricks or tips about the music industry has always been, you know, it's a little bit about your skills and your talent, but it's a lot about how good of a hang you are, you know, and how well you can get along with people. And that's very important.
Well, dude, it seems like you are an incredible hang. I just realized how much time of yours I actually took. So I want to get a verbal confirmation that we can do this again, because I'm on time constraints with my station. But I would love to have you back on. I got so much more to ask you and talk about. I love talking about your old touring life. But Quinn, it's been a real pleasure. Do you want to let people know your social handles if you'd like to be found, if people can follow you?
Yeah. Victor Quinn Hill, VictorQuinnhill on pretty much everything.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link it too when we post it. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a real pleasure. Super, super fun. I love your stories. I really can't wait to have you back on here, and we'll dig a little deeper. We're going to talk about the smelly kid on the tour bus. You know, we're gonna dig deep here.
Man. Yeah, anytime, man.
Awesome. Well, I'll be in touch with you, you know, offline, but thank you so much, man, for taking the time. Really a pleasure. It was great to hear from you.
No problem. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Go easy. Travel safe.
Yep. See you, dude.
Right, bye-bye.